If you want possibility thinking to work for you, then begin by following these suggestions. 1. Stop focusing on the impossibilities. The first step in becoming a possibility thinker is to stop yourself from searching for and dwelling on what's wrong with any given situation. Sports psychologist Bob Rotella recounts, "I tell people, if you don't want to get into positive thinking, that's okay. Just eliminate all the negative thoughts from your mind, and whatever's left will be fine." If possibility thinking is new to you, you're going to have to give yourself a lot of coaching to eliminate some of the negative self-talk you may hear in your head. When you automatically start listing all the things that can go wrong, or all the reasons something can't be done, stop yourself and say, "Don't go there." Then ask, "What's right about this?" That will help to get you started. And if negativity is a really big problem for you, and pessimistic things come out of your mouth before you've even thought them through, you may need to enlist the aid of a friend or family member to alert you every time you utter negative ideas. 2. Stay away from the experts. So-called experts do more to shoot down people's dreams than just about anybody else. Possibility thinkers are very reluctant to dismiss anything as impossible. Rocket pioneer Wernher von Braun said, "I have learned to use the word impossible with the greatest of caution." And Napoleon Bonaparte declared, "The word impossible is not in my dictionary." If you feel you must take the advice of an expert, however, then heed the words of John Andrew Holmes, who asserted, "Never tell a young person that something cannot be done." God may have been waiting centuries for somebody ignorant enough of the impossible to do that thing. If you want to achieve something, give yourself permission to believe it is possible, no matter what experts might say. 3. Look for possibilities in every situation. Becoming a possibility thinker is more than just refusing to let yourself be negative. It's something more. It's looking for positive possibilities despite the circumstances. I recently heard Don Soderquist, former president of Walmart, tell a wonderful story that illustrates how a person can find positive possibilities in any situation. Soderquist had gone with Sam Walton to Huntsville, Alabama, to open several new stores. While there, Walton suggested they visit the competition. Here's what Soderquist said happened. "We went into one store, and I have to tell you that it was the worst store I have ever seen in my life. It was terrible. There were no customers. There was no help on the floor. The aisles were cluttered with merchandise, empty shelves, dirty. It was absolutely terrible." He, Walton, walked one way, and I'd walked the other way, and we'd kind of meet out on the sidewalk. He said, "What'd you think, Don?" I said, "Sam, that is the absolutely worst store I've ever seen in my life. I mean, did you see the aisles?" He said, "Don, did you see the pantyhose rack?" I said, "No, I didn't, Sam." "I must have gone on a different aisle than you. I didn't see that." He said, "That was the best pantyhose rack I've ever seen, Don." And he said, "I pulled the fixture out, and on the back was the name of the manufacturer. When we get back, I want you to call that manufacturer and have him come in and visit with our fixture people. I want to put that rack in our stores. It's absolutely the best I've ever seen." And he said next, "Did you see the ethnic cosmetics?" I said, "Sam, that must have been right next to the pantyhose rack, because I absolutely missed that." He said, "Don, do you realize that in our stores we have 4 feet of ethnic cosmetics? These people had 12 feet of it. We are absolutely missing the boat." I wrote down the distributor of some of those products. When we get back, I want you to get a hold of our cosmetic buyer and get these people in. We absolutely need to expand our ethnic cosmetics. Now, Sam Walton didn't hit me on the head and say, "Don, now what lesson did you learn from this?" He had already hit me on the head by looking for the good, looking how to improve, striving for excellence. It's so easy to go and look at what other people do badly. But one of the leadership characteristics of vision that he showed me, and I'll never forget it, is look for the good in what other people are doing and apply it. It doesn't take a genius IQ or 20 years of experience to find the possibility in every situation. All it takes is the right attitude, and anybody can cultivate that. 4. Dream one size bigger. One of the best ways to cultivate a possibility mindset is to prompt yourself to dream one size bigger than you normally do. Let's face it, most people dream too small. They don't think big enough. Henry Curtis advises, make your plans as fantastic as you like, because 25 years from now, they will seem mediocre. Make your plans 10 times as great as you first planned, and 25 years from now, you will wonder why you did not make them 50 times as great. If you push yourself to dream more expansively, to imagine your organization one size bigger, to make your goals at least a step beyond what makes you comfortable, you will be forced to grow. And it will set you up to believe in greater possibilities. 5. Question the status quo. Most people want their lives to keep improving, yet they value peace and stability at the same time. People often forget that you can't improve and still stay the same. Growth means change. Change requires challenging the status quo. If you want greater possibilities, you can't settle for what you have now. When you become a possibility thinker, you will face many people who will want you to give up your dreams and embrace the status quo. Achievers refuse to accept the status quo. As you begin to explore greater possibilities for yourself, your organization, or your family, and others challenge you for it, take comfort in knowing that right now as you read this, other possibility thinkers across the country and around the world are thinking about curing cancer, developing new energy sources, feeding hungry people, and improving quality of life. They are challenging the status quo against the odds, and you should too. 6. Find inspiration from great achievers. You can learn a lot about possibility thinking by studying great achievers. I mentioned George Lucas in this chapter. Perhaps he doesn't appeal to you, or you don't like the movie industry. Personally, I'm not a big science fiction fan, but I admire Lucas as a thinker, creative visionary, and business person. Find some achievers you admire and study them. Look for people with the attitude of Robert F. Kennedy, who popularized George Bernard Shaw's stirring statement. Some men see things as they are and say, "Why?" I dream of things that never were and say, "Why not?" I know possibility thinking isn't in style with many people. So call it what you like. The will to succeed, belief in yourself, confidence in your ability, faith. It's really true. People who believe that they can't, don't. But if you believe you can, you can. That's the power of possibility thinking. Thinking question. Am I unleashing the enthusiasm of possibility thinking to find solutions for even seemingly impossible situations? Chapter 7. Learn from reflective thinking. To doubt everything, or to believe everything, are two equally convenient solutions. Both dispense with the necessity of reflection. Jules-Henri Poincaré. The pace of our society does not encourage reflective thinking. Most people would rather act than think. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a person of action. I have very high energy, and I like to see things accomplished. But I'm also a reflective thinker. Reflective thinking is like the crock pot of the mind. It encourages your thoughts to simmer until they're done. As I go through this process, my goal is to reflect so that I might learn from my successes and mistakes, discover what I should try to repeat, and determine what I should change. It is always a valuable exercise. By mentally visiting past situations, you can think with greater understanding. 1. Reflective thinking gives you true perspective. When our children were young and still lived at home, we used to take them on wonderful vacations every year. When we got home, they always knew that I was going to ask them 2 questions. What did you like best, and what did you learn? It didn't matter whether we went to Walt Disney World or Washington, D.C. I always asked those questions. Why? Because I wanted them to reflect on their experiences. Children don't naturally grasp the value or cost of an experience unless prompted. They take things for granted. I wanted my children to appreciate our trips and to learn from them. When you reflect, you are able to put an experience into perspective. You are able to evaluate its timing, and you are able to gain a new appreciation for things that before went unnoticed. Most people are able to recognize the sacrifices of their parents or other people only when they become parents themselves. That's the kind of perspective that comes with reflection. 2. Reflective thinking gives emotional integrity to your thought life. Few people have good perspective in the heat of an emotional moment. Most individuals who enjoy the thrill of an experience try to go back and recapture it without first trying to evaluate it. It's one of the reasons our culture produces so many thrill seekers. Likewise, those who survive a traumatic experience usually avoid similar situations at all costs, which sometimes ties them into emotional knots. Reflective thinking enables you to distance yourself from the intense emotions of particularly good or bad experiences and see them with fresh eyes. You can see the thrills of the past in the light of emotional maturity and examine tragedies in the light of truth and logic. That process can help a person to stop carrying around a bunch of negative emotional baggage. President George Washington observed, "We ought not to look back unless it is to derive useful lessons from past errors and for the purpose of profiting by dearly bought experience." Any feeling that can stand up to the light of truth and can be sustained over time has emotional integrity and is therefore worthy of your mind and heart. 3. Reflective thinking increases your confidence in decision-making. Have you ever made a snap judgment and later wondered if you did the right thing? Everybody has. Reflective thinking can help to diffuse that doubt. It also gives you confidence for the next decision. Once you've reflected on an issue, you don't have to repeat every step of the thinking process when you're faced with it again. You've got mental road markers from having been there before. That compresses and speeds up thinking time, and it gives you confidence. And over time, it can also strengthen your intuition. 4. Reflective thinking clarifies the big picture. When you engage in reflective thinking, you can put ideas and experiences into a more accurate context. Reflective thinking encourages us to go back and spend time pondering what we have done and what we have seen. If a person who loses his job reflects on what happened, he may see a pattern of events that led to his dismissal. He will better understand what happened, why it happened, and what things were his responsibility. If he also looks at the incidents that occurred afterward, he may realize that in the larger scheme of things, he's better off in his new position because it better fits his skills and desires. Without reflection, it can be very difficult to see that big picture. 5. Reflective thinking takes a good experience and makes it a valuable experience. When you were just starting out in your career, did it seem that few people were willing to give someone without experience an opportunity? At the same time, could you see people who had been on their jobs 20 years who yet did their work poorly? If so, that probably frustrated you. Playwright William Shakespeare wrote, "Experience is a jewel, and it had need be so, for it is often purchased at an infinite rate." Yet experience alone does not add value to a life. It's not necessarily experience that is valuable. It's the insight people gain because of their experience. Reflective thinking turns experience into insight. Mark Twain said, "We should be careful to get out of an experience all the wisdom that is in it. Not like the cat that sits down on a hot stove lid. She will never sit down on a hot stove lid again, and that is well. But also, she will never sit down on a cold one anymore." An experience becomes valuable when it informs or equips us to meet new experiences. Reflective thinking helps to do that. How to embrace the lessons of reflective thinking. If you are like most people in our culture today, you probably do very little reflective thinking. If that's the case, it may be holding you back more than you think. Take to heart the following suggestions to increase your ability to think reflectively. 1. Set aside time for reflection. Greek philosopher Socrates observed, "The unexamined life is not worth living." For most people, however, reflection and self-examination doesn't come naturally. It can be a fairly uncomfortable activity for a variety of reasons. They have a hard time staying focused. They find the process dull, or they don't like spending a lot of time thinking about emotionally difficult issues. But if you don't carve out the time for it, you are unlikely to do any reflective thinking. 2. Remove yourself from distractions. As much as any other kind of thinking, reflection requires solitude. Distraction and reflection simply don't mix. It's not the kind of thing you can do well near a television, in a cubicle, while the phone is ringing, or with children in the same room. One of the reasons I've been able to accomplish much, and keep growing personally, is that I've not only set aside time to reflect, but I've separated myself from distractions for short blocks of time. 30 minutes in the spa, an hour outside on a rock in my backyard, or a few hours in a comfortable chair in my office. The place doesn't matter, as long as you remove yourself from distractions and interruptions. 3. Regularly review your calendar or journal. Most people use their calendar as a planning tool, which it is. But few people use it as a reflective thinking tool. What could be better, however, for helping you to review where you have been and what you have done, except maybe a journal? I'm not a journaler in the regular sense. I don't use writing to figure out what I'm thinking and feeling. Instead, I figure out what I'm thinking and feeling, and then I write down significant thoughts and action points. I file the thoughts so that I can quickly put my hands on them again. I immediately execute the action points or delegate them to someone else. Calendars and journals remind you of how you've spent your time, show you whether your activities match your priorities, and help you see whether you are making progress. They also offer you an opportunity to recall activities that you might not have had the time to reflect on previously. Some of the most valuable thoughts you've ever had may have been lost because you didn't give yourself the reflection time you needed. 4. Ask the right questions. The value you receive from reflecting will depend on the kinds of questions you ask yourself. The better the questions, the more gold you will mine from your thinking. When I reflect, I think in terms of my values, relationships, and experiences. Here are some sample questions. Personal growth. What have I learned today that will help me grow? How can I apply it to my life? When should I apply it? Adding value. To whom did I add value today? How do I know I added value to that person? Can I follow up and compound the positive benefit he or she received? Leadership. Did I lead by example today? Did I lift my people and organization to a higher level? What did I do, and how did I do it? Personal faith. Did I represent God well today? Did I practice the golden rule? Have I walked the second mile with someone? Marriage and family. Did I communicate love to my family today? How did I show that love? Did they feel it? Did they return it? Inner circle. Have I spent enough time with my key players? What can I do to help them be more successful? In what areas can I mentor them? Discoveries. What did I encounter today to which I need to give more thinking time? Are there lessons to be learned? Are there things to be done? How you organize your reflection time is up to you. You may want to adapt my pattern to your own values. Or you can try a system that my friend Dick Biggs uses. He creates 3 columns on a sheet of paper. Year, turning point, impact. This system is good for reflecting on the bigger picture. Dick used it to see patterns in his life, such as when he moved to Atlanta and was encouraged by a new teacher to write. You could just as easily write event, significance, and action point on a page to help you benefit from reflective thinking. The main thing is to create questions that work for you and write down any significant thoughts that come to you during the reflection time. 5. Cement your learning through action. Writing down the good thoughts that come out of your reflective thinking has value, but nothing helps you to grow like putting your thoughts into action. To do that, you must be intentional. When you read a good book, for example, there are always good thoughts, quotes, or lessons that you can take away from it and use yourself. I always mark the takeaways in a book and then reread them when I'm done with the book. When I listen to a message, I record the takeaways so that I can file them for future use. When I go to a seminar, I take good notes, and I use a system of symbols to cue me to do certain things. An arrow pointing to the right means to look at this material again. An asterisk next to the marked section means to file it according to the subject noted. An open bracket means that I want to use what's marked in a lecture or book. An arrow pointing up means this idea will take off if I work at it. When most people go to a conference or seminar, they enjoy the experience, listen to the speakers, and sometimes even take notes. But nothing happens after they go home. They like many of the concepts they hear, but when they close their notebooks, they don't think about them again. When that happens, they receive little more than a temporary surge of motivation. When you go to a conference, revisit what you heard, reflect on it, and then put it into action, it can change your life. Ultimately, reflective thinking has 3 main values. It gives me perspective within context. It allows me to continually connect with my journey. And it provides counsel and direction concerning my future. It is an invaluable tool to my personal growth. Few things in life can help me learn and improve the way reflective thinking can. Thinking question. Am I regularly revisiting the past to gain a true perspective and think with understanding? Chapter 8. Question popular thinking. I'm not an answering machine. I'm a questioning machine. If we have all the answers, how come we're in such a mess? Douglas Cardinal. Economist John Maynard Keynes, whose ideas profoundly influenced economic theory and practices in the 20th century, asserted, "The difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from the old ones." Going against popular thinking can be difficult, whether you're a business person bucking company tradition, a pastor introducing new types of music to his church, a new mother rejecting old wives' tales handed down from her parents, or a teenager ignoring currently popular styles. Many of the ideas in this book go against popular thinking. If you value popularity over good thinking, then you will severely limit your potential to learn the types of thinking encouraged by this book. Popular thinking is too average to understand the value of good thinking, too inflexible to realize the impact of changed thinking, too lazy to master the process of intentional thinking, too small to see the wisdom of big-picture thinking, too satisfied to unleash the potential of focused thinking, too traditional to discover the joy of creative thinking, too naive to recognize the importance of realistic thinking, too undisciplined to release the power of strategic thinking, too limiting to feel the energy of possibility thinking, too trendy to embrace the lessons of reflective thinking, too shallow to question the acceptance of popular thinking, too proud to encourage the participation of shared thinking, too self-absorbed to experience the satisfaction of unselfish thinking, and too uncommitted to enjoy the return of bottom-line thinking. If you want to become a good thinker, then start preparing yourself for the possibility of becoming unpopular. Why you should question the acceptance of popular thinking. I've given you some broad reasons for questioning the acceptance of popular thinking. Now, allow me to be more specific. 1. Popular thinking sometimes means not thinking. My friend Kevin Myers sums up the idea of popular thinking by saying, "The problem with popular thinking is that it doesn't require you to think at all. Good thinking is hard work. If it were easy, everybody would be a good thinker. Unfortunately, many people try to live life the easy way. They don't want to do the hard work of thinking or pay the price of success. It's easier to do what other people do and hope that they thought it out." Look at the stock market recommendations of some experts. By the time they publish their picks, most are following a trend, not creating one or even riding its crest. The people who are going to make money on the stocks they recommend have already done so by the time the general public hears about it. When people blindly follow a trend, they're not doing their own thinking. 2. Popular thinking offers false hope. Benno Muller-Hill, a professor in the University of Cologne Genetics Department, tells how one morning in high school he stood last in a line of 40 students in the schoolyard. His physics teacher had set up a telescope so that his students could view a planet and its moons. The first student stepped up to the telescope. He looked through it, but when the teacher asked if he could see anything, the boy said no. His nearsightedness hampered his view. The teacher showed him how to adjust the focus, and the boy finally said he could see the planet and moons. One by one, the students stepped up to the telescope and saw what they were supposed to see. Finally, the second-to-last student looked into the telescope and announced that he could not see anything. "You idiot," shouted the teacher. "You have to adjust the lenses." The student tried, but he finally said, "I still can't see anything. It is all black." The teacher, disgusted, looked through the telescope himself, and then looked up with a strange expression. The lens cap still covered the telescope. None of the students had been able to see anything. Many people look for safety and security in popular thinking. They figure that if a lot of people are doing something, then it must be right. It must be a good idea. If most people accept it, then it probably represents fairness, equality, compassion, and sensitivity, right? Not necessarily. Popular thinking said the Earth was the center of the universe. Yet Copernicus studied the stars and planets and proved mathematically that the Earth and the other planets in our solar system revolved around the sun. Popular thinking said surgery didn't require clean instruments. Yet Joseph Lister studied the high death rates in hospitals and introduced antiseptic practices that immediately saved lives. Popular thinking said that women shouldn't have the right to vote. Yet people like Emmeline Pankhurst and Susan B. Anthony fought for and won that right.